I mean, simply put, if you're in this industry for the long term, it's the right thing to do in my mind to give back and be part of it. This industry gave my family its livelihood for over 100 years, really. And being part of these trade groups is a way to not only give back, but keep a true pulse on the industry, drive initiatives that help the industry, and of course, create relationships with some pretty amazing people.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Rebecca Pauley, Deputy Editor at Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. I'm joined here today by Russ Fisher of Box Office Studios, which provides editorial content to movie theaters. Russ, how you doing?
Pretty good, thanks.
Russ, I'm really glad you're back on the podcast joining us today because I rely on you for WGA, SAG, AFTRA, big cinema news whisperer here. So you're going to give us an update on what's been happening or what has sadly maybe not been happening over the past few weeks, because we do still have SAG-AFTRA on strike, even after the WGA has come to their own very good deal. Then, of course, we're going to swiftly move on to Taylor Swift and her $97 million domestic opening. In our feature segment this week, we are speaking to Ron Kruger of Santikos Theaters, who is winning an award at ShowEast, which is kicking off next week. A quick plug for a panel that I am moderating on Wednesday morning at 11:30 in Miami on premium experiences. Definitely a hot topic and one that I'm really excited to dive into with the panelists, one of whom is Wim Byens of Cinionic, which coincidentally is our sponsor of today's episode. I was really excited to speak to Dan Huerta, their technical solutions director. They have a new screen out. I don't know if Russ, had you read anything about this, but it's like, all right, the laser projection is already so crisp and so beautiful, but if we make a screen that's tailor fit to it, it can take it up a few more notches. But before all that, a quick word from our sponsor, Cinionic. This episode of the Box Office Podcast is sponsored by Cinionic, a Barco company, a pioneer celebrated for its breakthrough cinema laser projection, captivating audiences with breathtaking visuals. With more than 100,000 projectors installed, Cinionic is trusted by exhibitors worldwide to deliver high-quality experiences that keep their customers coming back for more. From the booth and the screen to the moviegoer, Cinionic's all-laser portfolio offers an elevated, efficient, and eco-friendly solution for every screen. Ready to go laser? Contact an expert today at cinionic.com. Many thanks to Cinionic for sponsoring this episode of the Box Office Podcast. Before we get into anything else, all right, Russ, what's up? Is this strike going to end anytime soon? Is it going to end by award season? What are we looking at?
Oh man, you are not going to get me to do something so foolish as pin down a date, even in the most tentative sense.
Date, month, hopefully year. Hopefully it'll be 2023, but at this point it's still kind of
it's tough right now. So the short version is that SAG-AFTRA and AMPAS sat down at the negotiating table last week, and they did some negotiating. They were in there for a couple of days, but then after the session last Wednesday, AMP-TP basically said, we're out, and they walked away. There seemed to be a couple of sticking points. One is the continued conversation over AI. The Actors Union wants performer consent and performer identity to be protected, and they obviously want performers to be able to continue to be paid for their work, even if, what's basically being used is a digital double that was created on any given show. The producers group seems to feel a little bit differently, so that's a sticking point. There was also the biggest one, which was sort of pointed out by Netflix's Ted Sarandos in comments that were became a bit of a flashpoint for the conversation last week, was revenue stream and actors getting residuals. And basically, it had been made clear that the earlier SAG proposal for revenue stream share was not going to fly with producers. So SAG kind of pivoted and basically said, hey, how about we base something based on subscriber counts? And it's
I saw something from Ted Sarandos to the effect of now they want a portion of every single subscriber. It's going to be next. I mean, what actually was the ask there?
The ask was basically a profit split proposal which would cost the studios 57 cents per subscriber annually, is my understanding, not daily or weekly or monthly. 57 cents annually per subscriber of people that are paying, $16 a month or, whatever it is, depending on the service. And again, this was a pivot. This was basically replacing a different request for a different sort of residual revenue share. And Sarandos called it a levy on subscribers and said that it was a bridge too far in the conversation. Really made it sound like that proposal was the thing.
It seemed very affronted by it from what I read.
Yeah, Sarandos seemed to take offense. And then, someone like Duncan Crabtree Ireland, who's the chief negotiator for SAG-AFTRA, he took offense with Sarandos's comments, saying it's preposterous. So there's a lot of ground to cover between these two groups right now. SAG-AFTRA basically says that they have made it clear to the producers that they are willing to come back to the table anytime. Producers just have to set a date and say, hey, let's sit down again. And as of the morning of Monday, October 16th, as we record this, that has not yet happened. So where we're at right now is waiting. These two groups had not negotiated since July, I think. And so now they're both, the actors are waiting for producers to say, let's sit down again. We can hope that they get back to the table shortly. But at this point, there's really no reasonable estimation. Obviously, we all want the strike to end, but it's impossible to say how quickly that might happen.
I mean, this really seems like this is when the heat starts to get turned back up. Obviously, there's no good time for this to happen in terms of marketing and promotion and all those elements. But at least you look at, September or October, it's a pretty quiet time on the release slate normally. But I mean, I just keep thinking about where we get closer and closer to award season. A lot of these smaller art house films that really rely on the cast being out there, like pounding the pavement, like Michelle Yeoh last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, just, telling her story and how she felt about the film. And like that part is so important, specifically during award season with the studios campaigning and the actors getting out there. I mean, I really hope it gets wrapped up before then, because I feel like it's going to be particularly bad for those smaller productions.
Yeah, I think bringing up Everything Everywhere All at Once is a really good point. That movie's awards season success was based very much, as you say, on those actors getting out in front of literally everybody. And they did that for months.
Everybody everywhere, everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you've got a title like Priscilla, the Sofia Coppola movie, which that sort of title would really, again, live and die on the actors getting out to talk to people about the movie. Without that being able to happen, there's a reason to fear that people might not realize that some of these movies even exist in the first place.
Definitely a concern. Hopefully we'll see a resolution to the dispute sooner rather than later, or at least a conversation, the two parties sitting down and then coming to a common agreement here. Because this time of year is when we really, really need that promotion. We, the cinema industry, the studios, the producers, but also, in particularly the cinemas, a lot of art house independent cinemas that maybe don't have the marketing resources are really going to rely on some of this red carpet studio content. So fingers crossed there. If you check up on boxofficepro.com and listen to the podcast every week on Thursday, we will have the labor issues whisperer Russ and update us on what's happening in that regard. So we may not have the actors out there pounding the pavement for these studio films, but we do have Taylor Swift, who came out with her Eras tour over the weekend. The big question here on this podcast, at least, was, is Taylor Swift the Eras tour going to cross the $100 million mark on its opening weekend? It appears that it did not, but it came very, very close at 97 million based on that's estimated grosses. As Russ said, we're recording this early Monday afternoon, so we are still waiting for those actuals to come in. But I think even regardless of not hitting the somewhat arbitrary $100 million mark, still a really great showing, obviously, for the film, tied with The Joker roughly for the top October weekend of all time. As I said, that they're so close that at this point we only have estimates. We're not going to be really sure if it broke that record, but at least it came close. I mean, it broke the record for highest grossing concert film of all time, but I think it did that like a week before it even came out. It had $100 million in pre-sales, I think October 5th. So yeah, it was a really good week, good week for Taylor Swift fans. Russ, did you see any of those like videos of social media of people really having a good time with it in the auditorium? I know that was something that I'd heard from some cinema people. Like, how are we going to let people know they can enjoy it and have fun and they don't have to just sit? And it seems like from what I saw, that wasn't so much of an issue.
Yeah, people seem to have a great time. And of course, that led to some hand wringing on the part of folks who consider cinemas to be a space in which it's like the old Footloose with Kevin Bacon. Like, we just don't dance here. Everybody turned into preacher John Lithgow. That reference probably doesn't make any sense to anybody, but it's okay. Yeah, people who went to see the Taylor Swift movie seem to have a really good time with it. I don't know how representative those videos were. I've certainly seen smaller recordings where it's just like, oh, there's 10 teenagers down in front dancing. But I mean, for a movie like that, great. And also, frankly, I'm sure I've said this here before, but we've talked a lot on the podcast about a demographic that hasn't really come back to theaters since COVID, maybe in part because they never really started going to theaters before COVID. And if the Taylor Swift movie is what gets some of the Gen Z demo into movie theaters, then yeah, great. We'll teach them to be quiet in the movie the next time. But for this one, you get a gimme, go have fun.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I do make me wonder, though, about, how it performed or how the audience was across different types of theaters. Like, how did the Taylor Swift concert film do at dine-in cinemas? Are people sitting down and buying burgers for the Eras tour? Like, what about maybe smaller independent cinemas? I got a message from a cinema owner in New Zealand talking about the difficulty as an independent cinema of even getting the film, as opposed to, obviously all of the major chains really had no problem with that. And I've been hearing other, I don't know, concerns is maybe putting it too strongly, but maybe if you are a smaller art house theater, you're not going to have that huge auditorium. You're not going to have those big screens. Maybe, I mean, if you weren't playing Taylor Swift this weekend, there really was not a ton else for you. I know that everyone at the cinema was Swifties pretty much this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my favorite things were, I know that in a bunch of regional markets, some of the first press and preview screenings of Killers of the Flower Moon were set up right next to theaters that had some of the first screenings of the Taylor Swift movie. And, I talked to a handful of people who discussed the bleed through of sound that they experienced from one theater to the other.
Some interesting soundtrack choices from Scorsese for this one. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a live remix of Killers of the Flower Moon. So we'll see how that plays out this week.
Well, definitely, yeah. Well, interesting to see. I mean, there's really been nothing really comparable to this film in terms of the scope of it. It really makes me wonder what those second week holds are going to look like. Looking at international numbers for a second. Internationally, the film was distributed by Trafalgar, which has a lot of experience, obviously, with event cinema releases, specifically concert films. They did a Metallica one recently that did very well, a lot of K-pop, BTS. Internationally, what we heard from AMC on Monday morning is an estimated 31 to 33 million, bringing in a global total somewhere in the kind of 130 million range for the entire weekend, ranking the number one at the box office in the US, the UK, Mexico, Australia, Germany, and the Philippines. And with a handful of major markets, including Brazil and South Korea, the film is still to come out. Also on IMAX, the film over-indexed, as films tend to do on IMAX. 13 million haul globally on 613 IMAX screens, and then 11 million or 11% of the domestic gross in North America. So it's definitely, I'm always excited to see studios and see cinemas try out new things, new concepts, especially when it comes to the marketing and the showmanship and the ballyhoo of it all. Not the best circumstances for why this movie's coming out now, with obviously the the strike and things moving off the calendar, but it's still a very interesting moment. Spot number 2, we have The Exorcist Believer dropping 58% to 11 million estimated in its second week. Number 3, Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie from Paramount, 7 million. Fourth place, Saw X from Lionsgate in its third week, earning 5.7 million. Only a 27% drop on this one on its third week, which, I mean, especially when you consider that horror films in particular tend to be really, really front loaded. Like, I saw that 27% drop number and I was like, whoa. I mean, I know the word of mouth has been good. I have never actually seen one of the Saw films, but I don't know. I know there's lore that I would have to catch up with.
With this movie, I think it's really much more about a guy angry at a medical system kills people. And that's something I think a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah. And then closing out the top 5 from 20th Century Studios in its third week, The Creator, $4.3 million. Up next week, in addition to round 2 of Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, we have Killers of the Flower Moon, which is being released domestically through Paramount Pictures. It is an Apple Studios release. It's kind of one of 2 really big, high-profile films this year, which are made by streamers who are putting them out in collaboration with traditional, more cinema screening outfits to put them in theaters. The other one being from Ridley Scott, Napoleon, which I'm very excited to see. So Killers of the Flower Moon. Given Killers of the Flower Moon, a little bit of an unknown quantity there, but our predictions, we have 29 to 38 million for the opening weekend, 97 to 141 million for the entire domestic span. Though again, we don't know when this is going to actually hit streaming, hit Apple. So that's a figure that can change up or down either way, I think. Russ, you said you saw you got some people who got a little taste of Killers of the Flower Moon, a little Taylor Swift, put in there. What have you been hearing about the film?
People seem to, I've heard basically nothing bad about Killers of the Flower Moon. The general opinion seems to be that it is a terrific film from Scorsese. There's a lot of conversation about the running time because it's not short. Some people that I know and trust have said things like, actually, it could have even been a little bit longer and we would have been okay there. So I'm curious about the degree to which Killers of the Flower Moon is really crossing over to a general audience. Certainly, I am part of a very cinema enthusiast, film nerd kind of crowd. So the awareness of the title is very high amongst my niche demographic. You get out to everybody else, and I don't know how much people know about the movie, but I think Scorsese's name plus the cast, again, it would be nice if that cast could be out doing promotion. That would really help a movie like this.
Actually, I didn't go out to the cinemas this weekend, in part because I was at a memorial service, actually, and just chatting with the people there, not in our niche really at all. Killers of the Flower Moon did come up, and it's runtime, and people are excited to see it, and I saw Oppenheimer, I could handle Killers. The runtime's no problem. So it was it's like streams crossing runtime conversation, and outside of the film nerd / film Twitter community. But yeah, I'm definitely excited for this one. And I mean, when you have Martin Scorsese and De Niro and DiCaprio and this cast, I mean, it feels like one of those, like with Oppenheimer, you want to see it really in the best screen, best conditions that you can. Certainly a cinema with comfortable seats because of that running time. But yeah, check back in on boxofficepro.com to see our predictions as they evolve throughout the coming days. And next, after this short break, we're going to hear from, again, our sponsors of this episode, Cinionic, specifically Dan Huerta, Technical Solutions Director at Cinionic, on this new Cinionic Laser Screen 2.4. After that, we'll be hearing from Ron Kruger, Chief Operating Officer at Santikos Grand Theaters and Amstar, receiving the Sala and Pasadena Award at ShowEast starting in just a few days. Russ, thanks so much for being on the podcast this week, and have a good rest of your week. We'll be right back. And we are back on the Box Office podcast with Dan Huerta, the Technical Solutions Director at Cinionic. Dan, how you doing today?
I'm great, Rebecca. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so we're recording this episode kind of in the run up to ShowEast. I'm definitely excited to see what Cinionic has to present there. You can hear about all these great new technologies, but unless you really get the chance to see them up close and personal, you really don't get a sense of how good laser projection technology has gotten over these past few years.
That's true. It's come a long way. Laser it hasn't been around for very long, but at the same time, major improvements, and both in the business and the technical part of the business.
And of course, Cinionic, I mean, you're one of the major players in that field. You're known for providing exceptional quality in laser projection, and you partner with AMC, Cinemark, Santikos, chains and cinemas all around the world to bring those bright, sharp, laser projected images to moviegoers, which is why I was a little surprised when I got a press release in my inbox saying that Cinionic is coming out with a screen. What is the Cinionic Laser Screen 2.4, and why did Cinionic create it?
Well, Rebecca, initially it was conceived as a premium large format or PLF screen, but during a long period of product development, we determined or realized it has the potential to do more than just PLF large screen venues, if you will. It has the potential to elevate the laser movie-going experience in auditoriums of all shapes and sizes, whether they be 2D or 3D. And at Cinionic and Barco, we're always looking for ways to innovate and add value in the process.
So it was initially developed as a PLF solution, and it ends up being something that can elevate the standard experience across the board. That's something that is so important. We talk at shows like ShowEast about how critical the premium experience is to bringing in moviegoers, but you really don't want to lose sight of the fact that you want every screen to have that premium look. You want your standard screen to really provide that beautiful experience to your moviegoers. We know that the Barco Series 4 projectors paired with the new screen, they augment each other to kind of showcase the projectors off to the best possible versions of themselves. Can you, I'm going to try to, without being too techie, how does that happen? What is it about this screen that makes the Cinionic laser projectors look so good?
Well, there's both the technical and the business element part of that. It maximizes the presentation efficiency by providing a higher gain screen, which means you can actually get the light levels that you need or desire using a lower powered projector, which also can offer the potential to deploy a lower cost projector without sacrificing quality, reducing energy costs, and providing a lifetime extension of the paired Barco Series 4 projector and our new 2.4 gain screen. As far as once you get that established, you can still run the same DCI luminance levels on your screen, whether it be 2D, 3D, and whether it be small, medium, or large auditoriums. So what this does is it has very similar characteristics to a lower gain screen, but provides you that flexibility both from a presentation technology perspective as well as an energy saving business perspective.
Now, when you talk about gain, again, just for people who are maybe on the different side of the cinema industry and aren't familiar with the terms, I mean, this is just the level of power that is getting thrown at the screen.
Yeah, think of it as kind of a reflectivity multiplier. So you can have a unity or matte white screen, which has a gain of 1. This particular screen, our new proprietary Cinionic laser screen, has a 2.4 gain, so 2.4 times the light reflectivity coming out of the lens and onto the screen as a matte white screen. So it does give you a lot more flexibility, again, from a projector choice, as well as being able to play really bright 2D and 3D images.
I mean, we've all heard horror stories about 3D screenings being muddy and too dark, and this just kind of creates a more uniform brightness and lightness on the screen, it sounds like.
Well, it all boils down to presentation quality if you're a moviegoer. And the great thing about laser projection in general, especially laser projection by Cinionic, is that it does give the owner operator of a cinema extreme flexibility, both from a day-to-day sustainable image quality perspective, because you never have degradation of the light source like you do with xenon lamps. So you're always going to get a bright, crisp image. What we've done is we have developed this new screen to pair closely with those Cinionic laser projectors, not just for presentation quality, but also for the cost of ownership, if you will.
Yeah, it's an important element of sustainability too, as cinemas look for ways to maybe reduce their carbon footprint. Having to use less power certainly is a big factor there.
No question. And in some cases, you can save up to 70% on your energy costs moving from lamp to laser projection.
I like a good savings. And I
Yes,
know
yes, everyone does in today's environment, for sure.
Yeah, I know our cinema partners definitely do as well. How did you work with cinema partners, with exhibitors in the development of this screen?
Our approach to testing an in-market laser to screen pairing experience basically took into account thousands of auditoriums worldwide, allowed us to learn, identify, and hone in on the right combination of parameters. Together with our development partner, Strong MDI, we approached the Cinionic Laser Screen 2.4 with the same process which we use to develop and test all of our solutions, our new innovations. We did have multiple prototypes of the screen, went through multiple stages of testing and development, including installations in live cinema settings across multiple continents. We did comparison testing with multiple screen types and different gains. We used industry standard test patterns and trailer content at lab and theater facilities. And the funny thing is, and interesting, we had both technical and very non-technical staff look at the new screen, and they all noticed the difference. If you're a moviegoer, even if you're not very technical, when you go to your local movie theater, you want to see the movie the way the creative talent intended it to be shown, whether that be the audio or the visual side of it. So we always take that into account when we're looking at new innovations and new technologies to go along with the new innovation ideas. So when this screen idea came to light, we looked at things like audio quality, speech intelligibility, a single perforation screen. We didn't want to go with multiple types of perforation. I know it seems like a minor detail, but we went with microperf only for both the audio transmission performance as well as the image performance and associated image enhancements. And also with when you're using less power, extend the life of the projector, increase efficiency, and overall lower your cost of operation like we talked about. So multiple benefits. We took all of the business and technical parameters into account when we were designing and developing this screen.
There are a lot of different factors in this screen that you put a lot of time and attention and energy and knowledge into. Like, not only is the light and the brightness and the image quality more uniform because the screen is meant to be used with the projector, but like the audio quality is also going to be better because it's only like the single perforation screen.
Yeah, again, a lot of people look at a screen as only from an image parameter perspective, but we wanted to look at it from an overall presentation quality perspective. So we've had one screen running operational in a day-to-day operation basis at a U.S. theater since the beginning of April of this year, and everyone loves it, both 2D and 3D. And it's been a success for us so far, and we look forward to further innovations on this particular screen model. And who knows, you might see something even more in the future as it relates to innovations on the audio visual side coming out of Cinionic, where we are a cinema born and bred part of the business, and we love what we do, and we're excited to help not just the cinema owners, operators, but the entire industry, including production, post-production, the entire ecosystem. We want to be a key companion to all aspects of that.
We're speaking a little bit advanced in ShowEast. Can you give us a little hint, a little teaser of where we can find Cinionic at ShowEast and what sort of things you'll be showing off?
I don't think we'll have one of our new screens at ShowEast, but we will have representatives there, and they can certainly explain to anyone what the product is and how to get a hold of it. We do have the availability of some sample pieces, And I'm sure as we get expanded into the rest of this calendar year and into early 2024, we will be showing this to multiple exhibitors at different locations across the world. So much more to come and many more demonstration locations and opportunities over the course of the next 6 to 12 months.
And on that note, Dan, thank you so much for joining us, and excited to see what Cinionic has on the show floor at ShowEast. It's my first time at the show, so it's I'm really looking forward to it. After this short break, we will be hearing from Ron Kruger, COO at Santikos Theaters, and receiving the Saul M. Hassanein Award at this year's ShowEast. Be right back. So, congratulations on the Salah Hassanein Award. That's a big deal. Did you know him personally at all?
I sadly I didn't have the chance to ever meet Salah. However, my good friend and our longtime film buyer Doug Whitford worked for Salah back in his United Artists days, and he always had shared some of the warm-hearted stories about Salah, as well as some stories that demonstrated how shrewd of a businessman he was, but. Charity was always obviously a big part of his mantra, but no, unfortunately didn't know him.
I mean, it's a huge part of this industry. I feel like, Variety and the cinema industry in the U.S., you kind of can't imagine one without the other.
Exactly. No, it's great that this industry is so focused on charity, whether it's Will Rogers or Variety, and I think, out of Memphis, the folks at St. Jude are trying to make some inroads as well with some on-screen promotional activities.
Santikos is, to switch topics. They're a really community-involved cinema themselves. A lot of proceeds go into community. I know they do a lot of coat drives and a lot of work with, just within their local communities and within Texas. It sounds like when I spoke to Tim Handren at Santikos I sent you the list of questions. Is that kind of tie into a cultural similarity between Santikos and Southern? Is that something that you're excited to kind of participate in going forward?
Yeah, both organizations have a focus on taking care of guests and taking care of employees. So that's some definite commonalities. And, Grand and Amstar locations, we have some really amazing teams led by management, many of which have been in the industry as long as I have. So, truly blessed there. And in our theaters, we continue to serve our guests well with, I think we're industry leading with 90% of our locations with recliners and expanded food and beverage. And of course, it takes a little, liquor sometimes to get some of these movies down. So 100% of our locations have some level of bar service, and given our southern footprint, they love their daiquiris. Really love that. But we're excited about the acquisition by Santikos that can help kind of elevate those standards even further. And the charity focus that we've been able to do in the Southern universe gets to continue under Santikos, and especially with their charity work as it relates to, we're working with them on the food drive right now, and we'll do a toy drive later this year. And, they've been partners with Variety on the Gold Heart program as well. So look forward to just, some bigger and better things with the combined organization.
Interesting and just really smart. It seems like you're sticking to the fundamentals of making sure that your people are taken care of, making sure that your people are providing a good experience. There's that personal element of the cinema experience. I know everything's kiosks now, but the personal experiences, it seems like you're really focusing on when it comes to this merger. Because that's what I find missing sometimes. The worst experience for me is not the print was a little scratched or this or that. It's a personal element that leaves a bad taste in your mouth if it goes wrong.
Right, yeah. You got a greeter at the front door who doesn't make eye contact with you and say hi, or has a little snarl on their face because they're having a bad day. Yeah, that's not the best way, because, guests are coming to the theaters to escape, and they want a good experience all the way around, and it starts with the employees.
And so much of the film experience, or the film, the way we talk about the cinema industry now is, what can a cinema give that someone can't get at home, in terms of the technology, in terms of immersive sound, in terms of premium screens, or cinema entertainment centers, the next kind of new big thing. Southern and Santikos, and Southern obviously kind of got into dining or realized the potential of dine-in really early on. Santikos with the entertainment centers, you're always kind of looking forward to what the next state's going to be to draw people in. How do you assess, like, as in your COO role, the risk of that? How do you know how to stay on the cutting edge but not the bleeding edge? What kind of research goes into that, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about networking and staying aware of what the opportunities are out there. But in terms of the risk assessment process, I mean, we model our projects a number of different ways with high, intermediate, and low risk assumptions, and get comfortable with assumptions and double check them with peers, if you will. And if it takes visiting a site that has something deployed, we'll do that and talk with that operator. And it really comes down to getting comfortable with those assumptions, and then if it fits our investment criteria, decide to move forward or not. And thankfully, with the acquisition by Santikos versus the private equity ownership Southern had before, we feel we could take a longer term approach in our investment horizon. So that I think helps the opportunities that exist for the Grand and Amstar locations.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you say to someone outside money, like, oh no, bowling's really making a big comeback now, like that's a big deal, and that's doing a really a good job of enticing in moviegoers. Private money might be like, what? I don't know if I quite believe that, but someone else in the industry would know to give it time, because it is, things like that are a big investment of funds.
Right. And, in the case of, a couple markets that we look at, or at least a couple theaters, it would take some major renovation, demolition, and rebuild of a complex. And that's a sizable investment. And, again, the private equity folks have a shorter time horizon on return than, we're going to be fortunate with the Santikos folks.
So the Grand and Amstar, they're keeping their original branding, right? At this point anyway. I mean, you wouldn't want to throw that away.
No. I mean, these locations have been in existence, 20 plus years in a lot of these markets, and there's brand equity, with those names, and they know it. Hey, we're going to go to the Amstar or the Grand tonight to go catch a movie. Why make a sign manufacturer, that we have lots of friends of those in that industry? Why make them any richer when, it's really about, the brand equity that's already there?
When did you start getting into, when did you start working with Variety? When was that? What's your history there? Because I know it's been decades, and you were the president and then a board member for Will Rogers, but can you kind of walk me through how your involvement with those two groups started?
Sure. Really, it started, at one of my first ShowEast 29 years ago, where I met Stan and Jody Reynolds. And, they were our insurance brokers at Warenberg at the time, but they talked about their excitement and things that they were doing with Variety. And there was a Variety tent in St. Louis, so I was able to get on that board and expand Warenberg's involvement with Gold Heart activities, as well as they were running telethons at the time, and supporting those sort of things. So it goes back 20 plus years. And then what was it, maybe 15 years ago, when I moved over to Southern, Stan W. Reynolds, their son, and Jody approached me as there was some openings on U.S. Variety's board, and had a chance to step up there and help them out and kind of work my way through the chairs there and start some initiatives with U.S. Variety. So we've had a couple of presidents since my term there, but we continue to be relevant with the Gold Heart program and sharing best practices, working with Variety International, helping out the tents in North America for their activities and initiatives that they have in place.
So on the other side, you have your involvement with Variety and Will Rogers, and then there's the more like industry group, NATO, TOMA side, the NAC. I've been to one NAC conference, and there was a sense there of like, you want to get more people involved in these industries. You want them to, go visit their local government officials and really advocate for them, and you need to be involved in things like that. Do you feel like if you're just a first-time theater owner, you're getting into the business, what's your pitch to belong to some of these groups, or to get involved in the community in that deeper way and in the way you are?
Sure. I mean, simply put, if you're in this industry for the long term, it's the right thing to do in my mind to give back and be part of it. You know, this industry gave my family its livelihood for over 100 years, really, and being part of these trade groups is a way to not only give back, but keep a true pulse on the industry, drive initiatives that help the industry, and of course, create relationships with some pretty amazing people across exhibition and the concession supply side of things. So, after 30 years, some of my closest friends are in this industry, and without those relationships and involvement, just kind of recent terms, I don't know if we could have weathered the pandemic as well as we did, sharing best practices and advocating for government relief the way we did to help keep the lights on in order to take care of our employees and guests.
Yeah, I love the history of this industry and the legacy of it. And that's definitely kind of what caught me like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And then, I got bit by the bug, and 10 years later, I'm still writing about y'all.
Well, and, my great-grandfather, Fred Warenberg, who started Warenberg Theaters, he was on a predecessor organization to Toma. I mean, I found a photo of him in one of our family scrapbooks of him on the cover of a magazine. So, I mean, it's been in the family. It's part of the expectation of giving back. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Thanks to our listeners once again for tuning in to this episode of the Box Office Podcast. Thank you to Cinionic, our sponsors for this episode. Really appreciate their support in making it possible for us to bring you this podcast. Thanks again to Russ Fisher, producer Chad Kenner, Dan Huerta of Cinionic, and Ron Kruger of Santikos Theaters. The Box Office Podcast is produced by The Box Office Company, Box Office Pro, and Record Edit Podcast. New episodes are out every Thursday, so please subscribe on your platform of choice and check in next week. Thanks. Bye.